people do, hit our website up, worshipleaderprobs.com, click on the prayer concerns tab. You could submit yours there. Again, we'll never share your name or your church's name. You can also DM those to us on any of the socials. Well, we love getting questions from you. We love to know what you're wrestling with. What kind of challenges are you facing in your ministry? And so you submit those and we talk about them here on the podcast. And we do that in a segment that we call Sliding into the DMs. So we have two good ones here today. The first one is, what do you do when the congregation is unresponsive? Well, that does happen from time to time, Jen, have you ever been in a situation like that? You live in those AG days, man. You guys always came ready.
No, but we had those days. Definitely had those days. The hard thing about the way we do this is I want to ask questions like, okay, is this a regular thing? Or is it kind of like, I'm noticing it just in first service or whatever. But and it's not an easy answer. I feel like probably the first thing I would say to this is in the moment, just on a practical end, try not to let it go to your heart and like really, really distract you, because then that's tough. So it's just like in the moment, try to not get too thrown off. Try to get too thrown off by that, because then that just becomes hard to lead. On a spiritual end, I do think that, as we prepare, part of our preparation for the weekend is like prayer, to like really, really be praying for God to, prepare the hearts of his people and that sort of a thing. But even in that spiritual like discipline of getting ready for the weekend, I used to have to remind myself, like, at the end of the day, I'm not responsible for whether or not people engage in worship. I'm responsible to prayerfully pick sets, to make sure the team is ready, to do my part, to make sure my spirit, my heart are ready. But when we step onto the stage to lead, we're responsible to kind of like, here, we're going to set the table. We're going to prepare the way, but each congregant gets to decide how they engage with worship. And so I think that we have to be careful, because when we start taking it upon ourselves to get them to respond, then it's almost like you start fishing for like maybe like not genuine, heartfelt responses. When you start provoking the crowd, come on, everybody. Yeah. Like, I know you can sing loud. You start doing things where it's like, that might not be a genuine response that you're going to elicit from them. They can feel manipulated or forced into it. So I think if we can kind of have that mindset, hey, this is what I'm responsible to do, to lead faithfully, to do everything ahead of time to prepare, but don't take it on ourselves whether or not they engage, and kind of trust that to the Lord, then we aren't going to manipulate them. Now, I'm going to also add this, though. If it seems to be a regular thing, like every single week our congregation isn't engaging, I do think maybe then we need to ask some bigger questions, like, do they understand worship? Maybe I need to talk to the senior pastor, say, hey, can we do a little series on worship? Or would you mind if for the next, 6 weeks, I did a small encouragement, in the middle of the worship set, just to help people understand this is what we're doing? Because I do think sometimes people just don't understand the significance of what it is that we're doing, why we're singing songs, so help teach them. That's part of it. And then I do think another part is look at the song selection. If you're pulling, every brand new song that comes week to week, there could be an element of your congregation just not being able to grab a hold of the music, or, you're just introducing new stuff constantly. And, worship teams, we get tired of music quick. We're like, I've had this on repeat, but your general lay congregant probably doesn't, so I think there's just a couple of different possibilities there, for why. And I do think asking more questions and seeking the Lord is all part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really good. I was going to jump to that same thing. As we've talked before about the AW scale, and, Pastor Scott has been on here to talk about the AW scale. If that term is new to you, AW stands for ascribing worth, which would be as good a definition for worship as anything else I've heard, ascribing worth to the Father. So he went through he and his team together went through the song library at their church. They assigned every song a number: 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. One would be a song that's, real horizontal. This is what my life. This is my testimony song, or whatever. And those are
Yep.
not saying those are bad.
Right.
There's a place for those. 5 would be, holy, holy, holy. That's a song we're going to sing forever in heaven.
Yeah.
And so they started to kind of chart the engagement of their congregation. Okay, what kind of songs did we do? Were we heavy on the 5s? Were we heavy on the 1s? I think the goal is to kind of mix that up, but make sure
Yep.
you're kind of leaning to the upper number side. And so, I've kind of taken that into my own heart as I plan and lead. And so I would say to you, I mean, let's take a look at what we're singing. What are we
Yep.
asking them to sing? If you are, if your congregation is made up of a lot of older people, and you're doing, Hillsong Young and Free and lots of
Yeah.
Mav City, and
Mm-hmm.
that may not be the greatest match for the people that God has called you to lead. So you have to know your congregation. That's kind of like 101 level. Like, who are the people that you're leading? And it's not to say we can't ever push or nudge in another direction. I'm a proponent of doing that, but I think if you're doing that all the time, like Jen said, if you're all the time introducing new songs, or maybe it's how you're introducing those new songs, it's time to maybe take a look in the mirror, have some conversations. I would not suggest like a church-wide survey. I'm not a big fan of those, but I
Yeah.
would say, like, who is a trusted person in your congregation that you could sit down and have a conversation with? Like, talk to me about, what are your experiences like in our services right now? Do you find it easy to participate? Are there obstacles to participation? Are there distractions? Are there things that are pulling the focus of the people and not allowing us to really engage in worship? What do you think of the songs that we're doing? Like, are they speaking to you? Is there a better way to introduce those songs? Like, there's a whole conversation that you could have there. But I agree with Jen. Like, if it's once in a while, I mean, that's probably something that we all experience, we all live through. But if it is something that happens on the regular, that would definitely be something to dive into.
Yep.
Are you singing songs that are just not songs that your congregation is maybe going to attach themselves to? They might be great for you, and in your personal worship time, you might really be thriving and having great times with the Lord for these songs, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to fit your congregation. So, I mean, you have to know your people. You have to know your team.
Yep.
There are songs that are going to lend themselves. Maybe you just have an acoustic guitar player or a piano player. There are songs that are really going to fit well with just that. There are other songs that might be a little bit of a challenge to do with just that kind of an instrumentation. So I think a lot of levels to this, but it is definitely worth digging into, having some conversations with leadership or your pastor, or the people in your congregation that you have good, trusted relationships with.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really good. Solid.
Yeah,
Solid.
that's my
Yeah.
2 cents.
I
Yeah,
that
I've talked for
was
a while.
your
It's
two
probably more like
cents.
4 cents.